Thank you, Ravi, and honorable dignitaries at the dais and friends here. It's a great honor for me to be here and share what the Government of India has initiated in the area of cloud. Just going back to the first slide, what I would try and do is to share with you that cloud is no longer a buzzword. In fact, while I go through the presentation, you will get an idea that today Government of India has not only come up with various strategies and policies, but you also have a cloud available for the departments to use for infrastructure and platform as a service. Now, what we point cloud, as far as Government of India's cloud is concerned, it's Make Raj. And of course, it's self-explanatory as far as the name goes, Make and Raj. But going beyond, I mean, what was it really that initiated and triggered government to look at this niche technology? I think it all started almost 1.5 years back when we had the data centers across the country, and what we started seeing is, while these implementations are happening, and we have a journey where we want to see these data centers over a period of 5 years where you have the infrastructure utilization happening. But as soon as the infrastructure the data centers are set up, in a year's time today, what we started seeing is 50% of the infrastructure is being utilized, because the prime model was co-location. So what happened was, in this co-location, while the racks are getting utilized, there was not an optimum utilization of the infrastructure. We found not only the operations cost was increasing, we're also seeing that the licensing, AMC, maintenance, whole lot of these issues were emerging as a part of the data centers. Now, there is a need for so many departments to really ensure and bring their applications on board. So it was felt that while we created such a huge infrastructure, even the national data centers set up by NIC, we need to optimally utilize them. And today what we see is, if we can actually leverage new technologies like cloud, the existing infrastructure itself could be optimized in such a way that what we have in terms of the rack space could be used to serve many more departments at the state and the center. The other important thing, if you see in e-governance projects per se, is the long procurement cycles. Even if you want to bring a small applications per se, I mean, you get into a cycle of having a consultant, developing an RFP, and then getting to the long procurement of the compute, and finally an application which is developed. So it takes 8 to 10 months time. Now, it is extremely important, and then what do? When we do the procurement, we start seeing, because it is extremely difficult for us to get into regular procurements. So we look at what is required, maybe say after 2 years, 3 years or 5 years, and go and buy for the peak kind of a thing. So if you see, what we do is, this whole cycle, if there is a technology which can help you expedite, I mean, if I just go, like you go on the online shopping malls, click, okay, this is what I need, this CPU, this RAM, this storage, and you are get going. I mean, you have started, you have your application, and tomorrow if you even have applications available where you just go, which are highly configurable, and you imagine the way you can expedite the delivery of the services. So this is extremely relevant from the government's perspective if you try and see. So we started looking at the technology. And as I said, in fact, we try and buy compute for the peak, which in what we've seen, a lot of e-governance projects, if you see income tax, if you talk about examination results and all, I mean, the peak is only for maybe a month, 2 months or something. And most of the time, the infrastructure is only 30%, 20% utilized. It's extremely important if we can have that resource sharing. When Department of Education needs it, they get the infrastructure. Income tax needs it, they take it. It's the same resource which could be done. And there's an optimization which is going to happen. And of course, the last but not the least important is the applications. Every state is independent in itself, and what we found 27 versions of the land records across the country. If you have this kind of a thing, imagine the investment in trying to maintain that kind of a software, and the cost that goes, the time that goes into it. If you are able to have an application which is configurable, which is multi-tenant, and it's hosted centrally, the whole entire cycle cycle of not only the deployment but the maintenance can be reduced. So I think cloud is an extremely important and a relevant technology for Government of India to bring a paradigm shift in the way we procure IT and the applications across the country. Now with this, June 2013, we started with looking at our policy and the strategy. We came up with two documents, the policy document, the strategy and implementation roadmap, and the very clear vision of the policy was, let's accelerate and optimize the cost using the benefits that the cloud can give you. And the policy clearly says, okay, we are going to leverage, first evaluate. We've not mandated today because you need to have that huge infrastructure in the country before you can send those instructions that no new applications will be taking any other infrastructure other than what's been set up across the country. So, but the policy very clearly says new applications have to be cloud ready. And the important thing is to come up with the necessary policies and standards which are required, because what we feel is the ecosystem has to be such that it provides fair competition in the country for government and private cloud service providers to provide services. However, you have the necessary policies, guidelines, frameworks, and the mechanisms in place to ensure that the necessary concerns in the cloud, whether you talk about security, you talk about privacy, those are taken care of. So this is based, and we have these two documents available on our website, and they are really detailed and they give exact vision of what the Government of India is moving into. Now, important thing is architecture, because a lot of people think, okay, GI cloud or the Government of India's cloud, Meghraj, it must be a single homogeneous single cloud per se, but that's not true. This architecture has a space for multiple national clouds and state clouds. And these national clouds, when we talk about, they could be set up, either they are purely government owned and run, something like the NIC cloud, or they could be a public cloud run by NetMagic, Civic, or whoever is giving the cloud service providers, or the private cloud service providers setting up a dedicated cloud for Government of India, could be for a specific department or it could be set up for multiple departments. So, I mean, we have space for all the categories. However, the binding principle is that they'll all have to follow the government-led necessary policies, norms, contractual agreements, SLAs, and other aspects which are going to be important to address the concerns of the departments and ensure the trust that is required. Now, important thing is for a department, if you have something like 10, 15 such cloud providers, where do I go? How do I ensure that, okay, one provider is today giving me these services, these are the rates. The other one is, there's no standardization. And so it's important that we come up with a single directory. We call it the Meghraj directory. Whoever is going to be accredited by Government of India to provide services will have to be registered in this directory, and there will be a single place where any department will go and have a look at the services and the necessary agreements, sample, master agreements, SLAs, everything would be available. Now, looking at this journey ahead, if you want to build this kind of an ecosystem, you want to have the various cloud service providers immediately in the country. For you to do that, you need to have a complete accreditation and a certification mechanism. You need to have auditors in place. You need to have the necessary standards, guidelines, policies in place. At the same time, you need to have the necessary advisory and the capacity building services made available to the departments. Because we've seen, in fact, today the departments are really aware about cloud, and we've interacted with so many departments, MHA, MEA, MORD, whole lot of them. They're all interested in having cloud services per se. However, the challenge is areas where how do you migrate an existing application to cloud? Or how do I integrate an existing application with the new components of the applications that are built in cloud? How do I build a new cloud ready? Because the concepts of multi-tenancy per se, they are still where we need to have I would say capacities in the country. The private should work in that area, because that's an area which is still, I would say, lacking in the country, because it's a very specialized area. And to build a multi-tenant application per se, in the current scenario where the applications are tightly coupled, huge awareness is required. So to do this, there's a complete governance mechanism that we've set up in the country as a part of the Government of India, which we call the Meghraj Apex Committee at the highest level, giving the necessary policy directions. We're going to have an expert group where the industry is going to be helping government in the policies and guidelines. We're going to set up a cloud management office to address the accreditation, standards, capacity building and all. And of course, below, if you see the other cloud providers in terms of the utilities, when you talk about a utility, it means the various business models that we have to evolve. I mean, you can have a model where you have a partnership kind of a thing, SPV kind of, a whole lot of business models which will have to be worked out and evolved for this. Let me share that while this whole has been going in this journey, we've done a couple of things. Our first national cloud by NIC under Meghraj was launched on 4th of February. And if you look at the figures here on the right side, you will see that almost 20 total number of users accessing cloud services, 24 departments have already started using, and there's a whole lot of requests with us. So there's a clear demand, there is a need. In fact, interestingly, there was one department recently, they wanted to evaluate if they had actually got into the rebuild. Okay, they decided now should we look at the cloud for the entire application and the infrastructure per se. So they had a committee, they evaluated the whole thing, we did a complete exercise for them, and believe me, after doing the entire evaluation, they have been convinced that yes, they can go ahead and move on the cloud, and they are now creating an RFP which is going to leverage one of the cloud service providers and have the applications, the stateless application, the cloud platform, to be able to do that. So progress, of course, while I've been telling, we have the national cloud of NIC launched. We have many more national clouds. I'm very keen. We want to see many more cloud service providers coming up. So we want to have the accreditation mechanisms put in place. We're recently going to do a demand assessment across the country for the central and the state departments, especially to understand, I mean, what is the requirement? What are the existing applications they're willing to do? What is the kind of data? This will give us an idea about what are the kind of applications which will, their highly secure data is there, which have to run into a government-owned, government-run. What are the kind of applications and the data which can go into a public? This will give us a fairly good idea. It will also help us to understand and know the capacity building program. So we're going to be doing it in July now. And we're going to evolve the various business models in terms of tariffs, etc. And a couple of, even the state data centers are being cloud enabled across the country now. The last, let me just quickly tell you, see, we've been talking about infrastructure setting up, but applications are extremely important. The SaaS is a very, very important component. We have actually launched our App Store also. If you can go to the apps.gov, we want to see this not as a repository, but as a marketplace, a place where the user departments can bring the request, first go and have a look at it. Okay, this is the application I'm looking, is it available? No, this is what I want. Then the private players across the country who are serving the government departments can provide their applications. We're building a business model, whether it's a user pay, transaction based, the whole model will be built across and made available. So we will be looking, I think this is going to give a fair chance for the SMEs to come, and because today if you see, it is very difficult for the SMEs to really qualify the pre-bid, pre-qualification and other things, but if you get this kind of a platform, it can transform the way the government procures the applications across the country, and I think that's a vision we are looking at, and working on the various IPR policy issues and all, and we would be very keen to work with the industry to get ideas as to what is the direction of strategy they think which is a win-win for the government and the private per se. And so with this, because I have a short time I was given and I've taken, thank you so much. And in my next session, which I have at 4:30, I would share a case study that we've done as to give you exactly the ROI on the cloud for a specific department. Thank you so much.